Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make another new Thor prop. I'm going to make Jane Foster's Mighty Thor helmet as seen in Thor: Love and Thunder. I want the helmet to fit someone other than me, so I'm going to make my patterns from this head cast that I had originally made for Beyond Geek. This basic pattern making technique is done by wrapping aluminum foil around what it is that you want to pattern. In this case, I'm going to use a head cast. The aluminum will contour to the shape of the face, and adding a layer of duct tape keeps the foil in the same shape. I cover the area that I want to work with. Well, one half of the area. I only need the left side for right now. The right side will be a mirror image of the left. I draw the parts that I want to make right on the duct tape. And for this build, I want to make it a layered helmet, so this first round is going to be the base layer. Next, I'll pattern a second layer with all the details that I want the finished helmet to have. I remove the foil and duct tape, and notice the pattern is still holding its head-like shape. I cut the pattern apart along the drawn seam lines. The pattern parts are small enough that they can lay flat on the table, even though they came off of a roundish head. I like to copy all of my foil patterns onto cardboard, because the cardboard is easier to handle and it's easier to trace onto foam. And to make sure to include all the registration marks, the part names, and notes. Cut out the cardboard versions, and use my pattern notcher to notch the sides of the pattern where each of the registration marks are. This is still just the first layer of the foam helmet, so all the parts are cut from 2mm HD foam. I only drew the left side of the helmet. To get the right side pieces, I can flip the patterns over and trace them again. Once I have all the patterns traced and marked on the 2mm foam, I can cut these shapes out for the last time. Gluing 2mm foam edge to edge is interesting because the parts are so soft and thin. But follow the registration marks, because the patterns will distort just a little when they're mashed flat, so the registration marks are the guide for getting proper seam alignment. The only difficult seam is the final center seam joining the left and the right half together. The biggest challenge here is just holding on to the parts. But I have my first 2mm layer finished for the helmet. Now I get to cover it with foil again and apply a single layer of duct tape. And I start drawing on the new parts that I want. This second layer of foam will be 4mm thick, and all the lines that I'm drawing will be visible. I adjusted the center line on the top of the head. I moved it over a few millimeters, and this will make it poke up and be the crest on her helmet. Remove the new duct tape pattern and start cutting out the parts. Now I don't cut out all the pattern lines because I don't want to glue on these really thin spaghetti pieces, but I do want to remember where those panel lines are, so I make sure to copy them onto my cardboard patterns so they can then be added to each of the 4mm foam versions, which are all cut again with a left and a right copy. Each of these pieces will make the panel lines on the finished helmet. Now in the past, I would typically just use a heat gun to slightly shrink the foam and make the panel lines open up, but all the lines on Jane Foster's helmet are softer. So I started using my rotary tool and a grinding stone to round over all the edges on each panel. So I've got all the edges rounded over. I've got them smoothed out the way I want. So when I put the panels back together on the helmet, I'll have the nice bullnose panel lines that actually look good. An issue I have is some of these are fine little lines that ideally could be done with, or I should say in the past, I've done with the wood burner, which would work really well, except I'll get a completely different line than the rest of them, which I don't want. I'd like them all to kind of match because they do. So I thought I would try something, which is I made a cut that didn't quite go all the way through the foam and then folded it over and rounded the edges that were exposed. When brought back together, I'm getting the line that I want, at least on my test piece. So let's take one of the larger pieces and see if it scales up. What I'm trying to do is cut most of the way through the foam, which lets me fold it open and use the rotary tool on both edges of the cut, and get both sides of the panel line rounded over without making an additional piece. And the idea works really well, but there are a lot of panel lines on this helmet, which took some time to do. But I like the look, and I think it'll look great when it's painted. This is pretty much all the panels I need to cover the helmet itself. This isn't going to make the wings. I still need to make the face pieces and the sigil that goes in the forehead, but this will do everything else. The trick is going to be exactly how to get these on the right space on the under helmet without those parts existing yet. I'm going to start with the center parts and glue them together because there's a crest. So I'm going to start with gluing these two together and then figure it out. It may be hard to see, but these two panels have an angle carved into the underside. So when they're glued together, they make a peak. I got the crest shape that I wanted. I mean, I'm not too surprised. I figured this would work, but there's an important step I need to remember. I can't put glue all over everything on the inside and mash it down because I'll lose what I got. So what I need to do is make a mark where I think I want to make contact to the under helmet and where I want to leave an empty space, a void that'll actually keep this shape from disappearing. Yeah, that's fine. As a place to start, I glue together the eyebrow panels. I pretty much know where they need to go, so I can glue them in place. And by test fitting a big brow panel against the helmet, I get a good idea on where the crest panel needs to fit on the back, which lets me mark the placement there. And then I can commit to gluing down the panels. Next, I add on both of the big brow panels, the crescents that are on the side of the head, the sport stripes or temple panels. And most of these panels meet around the back of the head and match up, which had me worried with getting them placed correctly the first time. The last main helmet panel are the cheeks, but I don't like the way it's going to fit around the back of the head. See, the big part of the panel is sitting too flat. It needs to scoop more. I decided to cut off the back part and just glue on the cheeks for now. I wanted to try the forehead sigil pattern.
Okay, so that went back a little bit. That's pretty freaking close. I'm okay with that.
And it still fits. And I checked the face panels, which also still fit as they should. So I remade that forehead sigil pattern, making it one piece and adding in a dart at the bottom. I traced the pattern and cut it out from 4mm foam. Now here's the tough choice. The rounded lines on the sigil is not easy to sand down like I did on the rest of the helmet, where most of the lines were straight. I'm not liking this, so starting over. So with the second panel, I ended up scoring the lines like I used to do and used a heat gun to get them to open up. I still sanded down the outsides, so that's going to match. And it is satisfying that the part fits as well as it does. I just hope the difference in styles is not as noticeable once it's painted. I used the two cut-off parts from the back of the head to make a new neck protection plate pattern. I want it to be one piece without a big seam. Nope. A wider second try is only slightly better. I made the third one rounder and wider and included 3 darts, and this one will work. So I contact cement it into place, and I'll trim out the extra helmet that's still sticking out on the underside in just a minute. Looking at it now, 5 darts would likely have been better, but this is gonna work for what I want. There is a single plate that runs down the front of the nose, and the plates that are over the eyes are plain, but the long sides are both sanded to be a 45-degree angle so they'll glue in flatter. There's a lot more detail on the face plates. I let both of these be a little long in the back because I wanted to be able to trim them to fit once I knew exactly how they would attach. I have one last major detail to create, and that's the wings that are on the sides of the helmet. Now these I just draw out and eyeball the size. It takes more than one attempt, of course. And one thing that made it more difficult was I put the sport stripe on the side lower than it should be, something that I did not notice until much later. Ultimately, I make a pattern for the wing, and it has stencil-like cutouts for all the panel lines. So all I have to do is connect the dots and make deep cuts into the wing, and then fold open the cuts and sand away the sharp corners until they're all rounded corners. And then I contact cement the 4mm wing detail onto some 6mm foam, and then cut out the edges. Round over the front, and really sand at the back edges. Because I don't want these wings to look like they're 10mm thick. They need to look thinner. I also removed a lot from the center where I thought the ears would end up going. Then after a quick test fit, I can see the sideburns are still too thick. I sand away even more from the back to make them thinner. And I really do like this Ryobi 1/2-inch belt sander. Sanding all this down was very quick to do, and it still has some of the same classic belt sander problems. It was almost easy to place the first wing, but I had to use a hand mirror to get the placement for the second one. And I'm really happy with the placement I got.
I think I'm okay with that.
Since the ears in the cast don't flatten out like ears do, it makes distortions on the helmet, which is kind of unfortunate, but at least you know real ears will fit. Let's get it sprayed with black Plasti Dip and start painting this thing. I like it black. Let's just leave it all black. It can be like the nighttime stealth version of Mighty Thor. Okay. The first color to go on the helmet is the deep red trim color. Now this is going to be a multi-layer process that started with a cadmium red painted right over the black Plasti Dip. Next was a coat of Alzerian crimson hue, and then a top coat of Plaid Effects Bloodline. And for the silver color, I wanted to try something new, something that would be more chrome-like, yet flexible. So I'm using a mirror chrome pigment from TKB Trading. It's a pigment powder that I'm just applying with an eyeshadow applicator sponge. It sticks really well to the Plasti Dip, but you really should wear a respirator when applying it. And the full helmet was covered with just a 2.5 gram sample packet. And to seal the helmet and keep it flexible, I'm going to sponge paint a thin coat of clear Flex Seal over the mica powder. I can't use an aerosol version like with Plasti Dip because that kills the shine. I tried some new techniques in this video, but I put a list of the parts and materials I use in the description. So I am super happy with how this turned out. This is looking really, really good. Does it look like true chrome? Does it look like the bumper to a 50s car? Okay, no. It's not actually doing that, not in person. It's got a really nice, bright and shiny metal flake effect, but it's close. It is way closer than anything else I've done for foam in order to get a chrome effect. Shop Gremlin actually suggested using the mica powder to do this, and I was told that if you were to use that mica powder on, say, fingernails, on the gel coat, before it fully sets up, you can actually buff your nails and make it be a true, real reflective chrome from this exact same product. So there's hope. There's hope of being able to do something with foam and get a slightly better chrome effect. But this was not difficult to do. It took maybe an hour to cover the entire helmet, and it took, I was afraid there wasn't going to be enough mica powder. I think it took maybe a third of that package. That's it. It took nothing. It goes on sort of like the way Rub and Buff does, where it takes the tiniest amount in order to cover the whole thing, so the product dries out in the tube before you can use it up, right? It's that type of a thing. So very affordable, very easy to do, flexible, right? It doesn't have the cracking problem that you get with any of the spray paints or with All Clad, which requires a gel coat, and it's way more touchable than the All Clad is. And of course, once it's covered with the clear of the Flex Seal, yeah, I like this. So thank you, Shop Gremlin, for the suggestion. This is working out really well. This is going to happen again in the future, and more Mighty Thor props are going to happen. Well, you've kind of seen what's happened once before. with the reformed Mjolnir. We're going to be making another one here next. That's going to be the glowing reformed Mjolnir. It's not going to break apart because, let's be honest, that's a CG effect, not a practical effect. So I'm going to make one that lights up from the cracks because that'll be really cool and something I wanted to do from the very beginning. But I've got a hammer and I've got a helmet that'll go along great with my Thor Odin son hammer and helmets that's hiding back in the corner behind me here. And I know there's going to be lots of different ways you can make Asgardian armor and Asgardian weaponry, but this is how Odin makes. A little beyond my foaming ability, but I can make one that lights up. So that's definitely going to happen. But for right now, I've got a Lady Thor. Wait, don't call her Lady Thor. I have a Mighty Thor helmet. I have the Mighty Thor's Mjolnir. There. That's actually touching my eyelids. That's weird. I want to thank Larry Unger, Chase Hookhill, Chris and John O'Halloran, and all of my Patreon supporters. Patreon members at the $5 and above level get access to my private Discord, which includes weekly games with me, property-related chat, and early access to live streams. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.